Hi guys, Allison here, the Bored Housewife, and I am back to making my podcasts, and I am bringing you this from Japan. I am so excited that those of you who are still following and listening are here. Thank you so much for, continuing to support me through this transition time. I know it's more fun when I'm posting every week, and I hope to get back to that in the beginning of the year. More on that soon. But yeah, I just have so much to share with you guys. I have gotten to do a lot of thinking over the last month and a half or so. And I hope you really enjoy the kind of series that we went on with, trying to figure out what our purposes are and, starting to move forward in our life. Like, finding these things that are going to bring us joy, thinking about what our needs are, how to get there, all those sorts of things. Some of you might still be trying to figure out some of that. It is a work in progress, and it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. It takes time, and I think a lot of thought and energy into a certain direction for those things to start manifesting themselves in a way, but also just putting into habit things. It's like sometimes when you see people and they're successful, we know the story, but it's a good reminder that, this didn't happen necessarily overnight for them. Most people who are successful, they've been doing this for a long time and working at it. So whatever it is that if it's being more in with your family, trying to get, a different job or new, hobby, whatever it is, I hope you guys have been doing a lot of soul searching and thinking. I know I have, and I'm super excited to share some of the things that I've been thinking about with you. This episode is definitely going to be about just a little crazy as I get my thoughts together. I am taping this in my hotel room. We have been living here for a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. And so my life is definitely chaotic right now and trying to work through all that stuff. So I will get into all of that in a minute. I am drinking coffee this week. If you saw my video on Friday, drinking and driving and all of that is very different here in Japan. It's not like you can just have a glass of wine and go about your day, and drive. It's very serious offense if you try to do that, which I don't disagree with. But it just means that I need to be more careful, and I am filming this in the morning time, and I have a very busy day ahead of me, so I get to drink coffee today. But however you are watching or listening this, grab your beverage of choice, and cheers, guys. Let's have some fun. Alright, so since I don't have a cocktail recipe for you guys this week, I'll just share a little bit about kind of the process that we're going through here. So, as many of you know, and if you've followed me on social media, on my personal page, we have been all over the last month. We were down in Florida, and we went up the East Coast into Savannah and Charleston, and then kind of made our way over towards Kentucky and did some different national parks and stuff. Spent a day in St. Louis, and then flew out to Seattle, and we got to spend a few days in Seattle, which was really fun. And now we're here in Japan. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, and I'll kind of get into some of the things I started to think about while we were on the trip. Very much needed trip for me and my husband. Especially now that we're here. life doesn't always go as exactly how you want it to go, right? So one of the big things is, it's just a very slow process. And I am just so like raring to go. Like I just am like, okay, I'm on top of everything. Like let's get this, let's get this. But that's not how things work. So for one, we had to be on quarantine for like a full week, and we had to wait until we got a negative COVID test to get to go out in town. So they call it a ROM or a working ROM, and we were on a working ROM. ROM is, crap, I already forgot it. Basically, it means that you have to stay in place, like you can't leave. But a working ROM means that you can like walk around the bases and stuff. So that was at least lucky for us since we are vaccinated. We got to we didn't have to just stay in the hotel room for the last week. However, we needed to buy a car, we needed to do a few different things, and also get around to the other bases. Not everything here is just one big base. They have like, I don't even know how many bases, like 5 or 6 of them, or maybe even more. There's different things on the different bases that we needed to go to like, start filling out. So, like, for one, getting our housing scenario started and that application going, we had to go on a totally different base. And we, just been relying on people. And it's hard because I like to be very self-efficient. And they kind of put you in a scenario here where you don't necessarily get to be self-efficient right away. And you have to rely on other people. And luckily, everyone that we've dealt with so far has been really kind and nice. And, that's been a blessing, but it's still, frustrating not being able to just get up and do. And so we finally got our negative COVID test back. We did not have COVID. And we were able to go out and buy a car. But even buying a car, it still takes 2 days for you to get your car back because of inspections and just how they do things here. So we bought that Monday, and today's Wednesday. We get to pick it up hopefully later this evening, and then we'll finally be a little bit more independent. But it's like, we're a full week and a half, almost 2 weeks into getting here, and we're just now able to get a car. So that has been fun. Also, the biggest one for me that I'm still working on, I'm getting there. I had hopes of living out in town. I really wanted to live in town because I thought it would be like a more enriched cultural experience to have like actual Japanese neighbors and kind of force me to figure out the language a little bit quicker and just, different things and just really feel like, you're living somewhere different. And the Marine Corps or the military, DOD, whoever it is that makes these decisions, the housing people here were like, no, you get to live on base. So they have this thing called mandatory on-base housing. And so if they have the room for you, then you have to live on base. I'm sure it's a scenario of just, keeping relations good with this country and, they have the room. It's, very expensive to give people money to live other places. So I think that has something to do with it. But, it's just my husband and I. A lot of people do want to live on base because there's more comforts here of America. It doesn't feel as much like you're living in another country. Everyone around you speaks English, lots of different things. And those are all positive things, right? Like, I'm sure I will at some point be very happy, especially when Cliff might be gone on a deployment or like on a work trip scenario. I might really feel grateful for that. I'm telling myself these days because I'm still working through not getting what I want. And so it's hard, but like we've talked about so much, it's like, I'm in control of my feelings, and that's pretty much it. Even if we were to get out on town, we might not have ended up with like the best living scenario. We might have ended up with like a crappy agency. And I've had those landlords before that are pieces of shit. They just are. I lived in an apartment with my best friend for almost a year where we didn't have a working stove or oven, and they could not have given a shit less. And they didn't even it wasn't even a planned scenario. Like, we just came home one day and like the gas was turned off for that line, and 1 month turned into like 5 months, which turned into like a full year. It was ridiculous. So I'm not, I wouldn't be, I don't know what word I'm trying to look for there, but again, bear with me, guys. This is not weird, but it's just I'm a little rusty from not doing this for a while. But anyways, so, things happen, and at least on base, if, our whatever breaks and whatnot, I guess they're very prompt in coming and fixing it. And so anyways, it's an adjustment, right? So far, the little that I've seen of Okinawa, it's really cool and it's beautiful. I live in a big city again, and that's kind of neat. And I am really eager to learn Japanese, at least to the point of somewhat conversational, of like pleasantries and like ordering things and stuff like that. It's amazing to me that so many people here speak English, and not that, they can't learn, but it's just like they learn it at such a younger age. They learn it in elementary school, and it's just amazing because Japanese is so different from English, and English is hard to learn. Japanese is hard to learn, and it's just really impressive that they know both languages, and they know it as well as they do. And Okinawans also here kind of have their own language as well. So they speak Japanese, but then they have their, and I think it's more amongst the elders, the older generation, but they have another language that they know how to speak. So anyways, lots of stuff to learn and share with you guys. Definitely already going through some things, and I'm going to get into that in the next few weeks. Not only our trip did we have some interesting experiences, but then also here just kind of getting settled in and things not happening exactly the way that you want them to. So yeah, let's get into the episode. Okay, so I'm kind of using my trip for this first episode and in the next few talking points about things. So the first 15 days, we were gone a little over 30 days, or maybe 30 days, I'm not exactly sure, but I would say about the first 15 days was very much about us figuring each other out again. On recruiting duty, I think I've shared this with a lot of you, but my husband was just very focused, and a lot of his attention went to recruiting duty, and then the little bit extra that he had left was attention to me, which I think he did a pretty decent job at. But little things like, should we buy this? Our friends are asking us to go out here. What do you want for dinner? Just random little everyday things that we have to think about. It just kind of was overwhelming for him. And so I just really took the reins on a lot of decision making when it came to our house and our personal lives. And a lot of that too, if he couldn't give me an answer, trying to make plans or whatever, it was either we didn't make plans or I just made them for myself. And if Cliff can come along, then he'll come along. So for the last 3 years, it was really kind of like that. And so I knew this trip was going to be important because we really needed time to reconnect. And it was I didn't necessarily know that was exactly what it was, but I knew that we weren't completely ourselves in our relationship. And so I'm glad I had the foresight to do that because, again, getting here in Japan, it's been a lot of adjustments and a lot of, frustration of having to wait for things and then not getting the answers that you necessarily want. And, had we not had time to like relearn how to communicate with each other, I'm not sure that this process would have been as smooth as it has been. So anyways, the first 15 days was very much about realizing that. And it's like, even trying to put up our tent, or should we go this way or this way, or what do you want for lunch? Like, all of a sudden he has opinions again. And I'm like, wait a second, you don't have opinions. Only I have opinions. But no, he does have opinions. And that's great that he has opinions. And I'm happy that, at least this moment, I don't have to make all the decisions like I was. It's nice to share that with somebody again. And, but it was a lot of bickering, trying to figure that out, and, communicating like, hey, this is the way, that I think we should do it, and having to compromise again, because he really just kind of went along with a lot of things that I decided on recruiting duty. So that was interesting. And so that took about 15 days, and then we had this really big fight. And it was a good fight. We needed it. And it just kind of got everything out. And, we said our sorries, and finally we're able to kind of look at each other and see where we were both coming from. And then we just moved on. And it was actually pretty smooth sailing after that. I mean, of course, when you spend so much time with somebody, you're going to have your moments or whatever. But yeah, after that, it was just like a whole different thing. And so, he needed to relearn patience again. So it wasn't just me being like, oh, your opinions matter now. I have to remember that. It was also a matter of like, he's used to working in this sort of atmosphere and environment, and, getting very short with me on things. And so he had to relearn patience, and he's been doing a lot better at that. So, just a lot of stuff, that is marriage stuff, and it's good. And, we were both very thankful to have the month off and just relax and kind of get back into that again. So those first 15 days were definitely about relearning each other. But then, as far as my mind went, I was just trying to be very present. I hadn't really, I wasn't really thinking too deeply or anything. I was just kind of like, so for me, I wasn't like thinking too deeply about things. I was just kind of trying to be present in the moment, and, take in the things that we were seeing. In the next few episodes, I will get into some interesting things about adversity. Now, did I experience like emotional, crazy anything? No, of course not. But I did have to face some fears, and that was very difficult for me. I will say, I think God, or, whatever, put and implanted the idea of camping in Florida for a reason, so that I would become acclimated. Not only to the weather, but to the creatures that we're probably going to encounter. We've already had a gecko in our hotel room, so that was really fun. I go from snakes in Alabama to spiders and geckos in Okinawa. But yeah, so then the next 15 days is the next part I'm going to get into, because that's really when things kind of started kind of coming together for me. So since we got to Japan, I was trying to think of this word, and I think this is what I was thinking of the whole time, and it's synchronicity. And synchronicity is when everything in your life kind of like syncs up, everything, these little moments and things start to kind of make sense. And I think it feels kind of cosmic. It feels like this bigger than you sort of scenario. But I think our brains are really interesting, because it's one of those like, if you really want a dog, and then you're going to start seeing dogs everywhere. If you want a baby, you're going to start seeing babies everywhere. And it's like your brain, I think there's like a psychological phenomenon of what it's called, or like a whatever. But it's like when something's on your mind, then you spot it, more often in the world. And so for me, when we were on this trip, the last 15 days, or we'll say that, it might have started happening a little bit before that, but it kind of started happening after we left Key West. And so when we were in Key West, we went to the Hemingway house, and I've always wanted to go there, and the first time I went to Key West, we didn't make it there. So it was definitely on my list of places that I wanted to see. And I thought I had read Hemingway before, and then as we were walking through the house and I'm like looking at the titles of his books and stuff, I realized I'm like, I have never read a Hemingway book. Like, it's weird. And so I was a little disappointed in myself because I love to read, and I love like really, really good novels, and I feel like it's kind of hard sometimes these days to find good novels. And so I was really excited and disappointed at the same time that I hadn't read Hemingway, because I was like, well, now I get to explore a new author, but I just couldn't believe that I hadn't read him yet. So first thing that I'm going to talk about is that I started reading this book. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. He has a blog. I think my friend actually follows his blog, or did at one point. I've definitely heard his name before, and when I was away on my trip to San Diego, or maybe a little bit before that, I can't remember now, I was having a hard time. I was just kind of caring too much about dumb stuff, and just like filling my time, like, thinking about these dumb occurrences and things going on that, were out of my control. And it's like, I know that I shouldn't be concerning myself with these things or caring about this sort of stuff, but it was giving me anxiety and just a bunch of different feelings, right? And I was making myself crazy. And my husband's really good at letting things go, and so he found this book, which is so sweet, and thought that this might help kind of like get over some of that, because he told me on multiple occasions, like, you seriously just need to not give a fuck. And I'm like, yeah, okay, easier said than done. So this is, I guess you could say, a self-help book, but it's the very like unselfiest help book I've ever read. That's the right word. But it was really interesting, and I took a lot from this. I will say, do I think it's the most well-organized book? No. I think the author is very interesting. I think that his points in the book are right on. A lot of it surrounded a lot of the things that I had been talking about in the last kind of series that we worked on before this episode. And so if you're interested in kind of getting like another perspective of that, I highly recommend reading this book. It was super easy to read, and I definitely took my time reading it because like we were on vacation, so I didn't always have like a good amount of time to sit down. But I kind of liked that I read through it slowly, because then it really helped me kind of sit with some of the ideas he was talking about. I do think he's a really great writer. I just think that the book was a little unorganized, but it still made a lot of sense to me. So I really do recommend it. But one of the things that he talks about in this book is getting your values straight. What are the values? And, we talked so much about, our purpose and the things that we want to do. And I think that instead of maybe calling it purpose or, finding your joy or whatever, like finding what your values are, I think pinpointed it so much better. And so as I'm reading this, I'm just like, yep, that's what I've been talking about. Yep, that's what I've been talking about. So I thought that was kind of cool, and definitely a synchronicity that, here it is, and he just kind of put it in a better form, I think, than I was able to. So next week or the week after, I can't remember how I have it listed out, but we're definitely going to be talking more about values and, where those are coming from. And so a big part for me during reading this book is I realized a lot of my issue with motivation and actually doing the things that I want to do is because my values are out of whack. And like I said, I'm going to get into that, but that was one of the things that I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting. So then, we go to the Hemingway house, and I decided, since I had not read anything from Hemingway, I was going to pick up his very first book that he, published, and it's called The Sun Also Rises. And I gotta say, you guys, I just am in love with this book. I'm going to read it again. I get it. Get why he was so famous. And he is all over Key West. It's crazy, like, how prominent he was in that area. But, I just was so taken by this book. And then as I'm reading it, there's this whole section in it that's about values. And I'm like, wow, that's what I've been talking about. And the book is about, like, human nature and relationships and all of that. And I love books like that. And I think people really love books like that because, it helps us find something in ourselves. And it's interesting because these characters don't have, like, great backstories. Like, we don't know where they really came from. They just kind of, like, here they are, and we're like living their lives with them in this moment. But you learn so much about them through their actions and the things that they say. And if you want a good novel and you've never read Hemingway, I really recommend this one too. And it's very interesting how he writes as well. It's they have a name for it, and I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, I just thought, like, here I am sitting here already thinking about my values in life, and where are those taking me, and I need to really think about some new perspectives to have, and try that out to see if that kind of fixes my motivation and stuff. And here then this book is like talking about values and where these things come from, and I'm just like, okay, that's kind of weird. So then the next one is I started reading a book about Teddy Roosevelt, and I just really love Teddy Roosevelt. I think he's super cool. He's a very interesting human being, and as I like fictional stuff, I like philosophical stuff, and I also like biography stuff. I like learning about people. And so reading this book about Teddy Roosevelt, and it's more so about his life after his presidency. And for those of you that don't know, Teddy Roosevelt decided to go on a safari, this huge, big trip after he didn't run for re-election. And so he went and did this crazy trip with his son, and they, collected a lot of specimens for the Smithsonian, and I think it's also part of the reason why he's such a prolific figure at the Museum of Natural History, because I think a lot of those specimens maybe he also contributed to the museum. But most of them were for the Smithsonian. It's kind of a little bit of drama. Because he had to get funding for this trip and everything. But so, however, it's, I just find him as an interesting guy. Well, I'm walking around Hemingway's house, and he has, like, pictures of Teddy Roosevelt. Apparently, Hemingway was a huge fan of Teddy Roosevelt. Thought he was amazing. Hemingway was really into fish and game, like hunting and fishing and all of that. And part of his time in Key West was spent doing, like, deep sea fishing, like big fish fishing. He was really into it. And so, I thought that was really random that, here I am admiring Hemingway and also admiring Teddy Roosevelt, and then I find out that Hemingway was a huge fan of Teddy Roosevelt, and almost kind of like, wanted to replicate part of Roosevelt's personality into his own. Like, he took it to the point where, like, he went off and, did safaris and did these sorts of things and then wrote about it as well. And Teddy Roosevelt wrote a lot about those things too. So I thought that was kind of weird. I was like, oh, I didn't know he was a fan of Teddy Roosevelt. That's interesting. And then, we were going to Dry Tortugas National Park, which was amazing. If you ever get an opportunity to do that, I highly recommend it. But yeah, Hemingway spent a lot of time out there fishing and just different things. And, back then, ferry boats and all that weren't the same as they are today. So getting out to the Dry Tortugas was like a much bigger adventure, and especially with the fishing and everything. And so they would be out there for weeks or something, days at least, going there and coming back. And so I'm like, this is so interesting. It felt like, and that's where I say, like, the synchronicity started to come in, because I'm just like, here I'm sitting here thinking about all these things, and then they're just kind of like popping up, in my life. And these people are very prominent and big. So is it that much of a coincidence about Hemingway and Teddy Roosevelt and seeing this particularly in Key West? Like, no, it's not that big of a coincidence, but other people seeing that, it's not going to affect them the same way because their mindsets are in the same place. They might walk through Hemingway's house and have had no idea that he was such a fan of Roosevelt. They might be more into his novels than his other books that he wrote about that sort of stuff. And so, or even if they did know about it, they're like, yeah, that's just a fact that we know and it doesn't matter. But for me, it meant something. And then also spending time at Hemingway's house, he had this beautiful writer studio, like above a garage or something, and it just felt really cool in there. I guess you can actually rent it if you're a writer. You could rent it for an afternoon and write in there. I guess feel the spirit of Hemingway come through you. I don't know what people will do with that. I guess it would be a neat thing to say that you did, but I just really, again, I think I've talked to you guys about needing more structure and needing a certain setup, and so to help kind of create that structure. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely, just drove home these ideas that I've already been thinking about. And I think when you're seeing these things and life's kind of like bringing these things up for you, I think it's a sign that you're on the right path. And not so much, again, like it's a cosmic sign. It's a sign that your mind and your mentality is like moving forward in like synchronicity. That you're moving forward in a complete thing, and that you're kind of starting to put these like puzzle pieces or weave things together, however you want to think of it. But I think when we're seeing these similarities pop up everywhere, I think it just means that we're on the right track for ourselves, that our mind is finally kind of starting to get it. Because, like I said, that those first 15 days and even the last few months, I've just been it's been very chaotic. I've been circling these feelings and these ideas and, talking about them, but it's one thing to talk about it, and then it's another thing to feel like it all now fits together. And so that's when it really kind of started to click, and I was like, yeah, I think these ideas are really important, and I need to remember them, and I need to let this sort of drive me forward, when we get settled in Japan, and I'm thinking about, how I want to arrange things and what my schedule's going to look like and all sorts of things like that. And so I think our mind, it feels like, again, it feels cosmic. It feels like, and, maybe it is. Maybe it is, some signs from God or signs from the universe, however you want to look at that. But whatever it is, I think it means that you're starting to align. I think that's a better word to use. And that the focus is definitely there. So the last thing I want to talk about before I let you guys go is just, we spent a lot of time in nature, and if you, like, I was talking to an old friend the other day, like, 10, 15 years ago, if you would have, predicted that I would be out camping, like, for 15 nights out of 30, on the road, roughing it sort of scenario, I don't think anyone would have suspected that I would be into something like that. My mom and I, my mom, she loves to say this, and I think it's really funny. When I met my husband, he slapped the champagne out of my hand and put a beer there. And it's good. I think it's really good because, I come from a very humble place in living in Iowa. Very nice family, very, pretty fortunate upbringing. But we're not super fancy people. We're not, we can appreciate the finer things of life, of course. But it's not like, we grew up with silver spoons in our mouth. And so, I think moving to New York and living the way that I did and just kind of being exposed to different things and being so young, my head kind of went this way. I don't know. I just got a little obsessed with things that I consider a little superficial, and definitely moving to LA, I had to take a huge step back and kind of get humble in my living scenario. And then meeting my husband, we're very comfortable, but he just, then introduced me to some new things again, and things that I had done before, like camping. Like my family and I, we used to camp all the time. But like it wasn't my favorite thing necessarily. I loved to do it as a little girl, but then as I got older, it just was not my sort of thing. And so, and that had a variety of reasons that I don't need to get into. There's so many reasons as to where my interests lied at that time, and definitely into my 20s, and where my head was at and what my priorities were. So meeting my husband was a very interesting time, and a lot of changes were happening, and I was very open-minded, and so, we started hiking and doing some more outdoorsy things, and I really liked it. And then coming out to Alabama, we camped a lot, and we saw a lot of national parks, and I just loved it. And I'm so happy to have that experience and to learn that, because now I love getting out in nature. I love seeing, especially in America, it's just so beautiful, and there's just so many different landscapes, and we're all really fortunate to be able to experience those if we want. And so what I've learned from being in nature is like, and this is going to sound cliche because it is, but it's not untrue. When you get out there, you just feel so small and you feel so insignificant, and you realize, there's so many forces out there that are bigger than us, and sometimes that can be really intimidating, and for some people who are a little scared to get out there and do that, I can totally understand. It is intimidating, going up against Mother Nature. And so, but it's also really humbling, and it's exciting, and it can be rewarding when you sort of overcome some of the challenges that she throws your way. And so, again, with the synchronicity sort of thing, we're out, in different environments. We were down in like the bayous of Florida. I don't know. Bayous are in Louisiana, but we're in these like marsh areas of Florida. Worrying about alligators and snakes, and most of the time we just saw spiders and lizards, but looking at different things. And one day I was like looking around, and I just started realizing how much nature resembles different things in nature. And I'm sure a lot of that is based off survival and, evolution kind of doing that for like different animals and plant species and how they survive. But also, like, on a philosophical level, just, again, seeing that and having, you know, these personal moments of thoughts, and then also seeing how much, nature kind of replicates itself as well. And so I kind of was thinking about it, like when you're a little kid and you're laying on your back and you're like looking for shapes in the clouds, like our imaginations will, help us see things and kind of make these things interesting. And so I just thought that was kind of neat because, I'm worried about seeing a snake or something. And then you see like this tree that's grown really, wiggly, and it looks really unnatural for a tree. And you're kind of like, you step back a little bit because you're like, oh my gosh, what's that? And then you're like, oh, it's just a tree. But it's like, your mind's on these things that you're kind of like looking out for, and you're like super hyper aware because you don't want to get hurt. And like even just the sounds, like the wind and how that can like replicate different sounds, and even like birds and animals, like so many, like so often we couldn't tell, is that a bird, is that a different animal, like what is that noise, because they all can sound very similar. And so people who can like really hear those different sounds and like decipher them and are like, oh, that's a whatever, it's really impressive too, because it's just like so much of nature resembles itself. And so, we're part of nature. We're part of, when it doesn't even feel like it, there is this, very natural aspect to us. And it's cool being where we are. And it's interesting when we're in these city environments or, our suburban environments or our towns, whatever it is, how much of safety we have found in those things. And then going out into the wilderness and being exposed that way is, like I was saying, very humbling. And it really makes you start thinking about your existence and your purpose here and the values of things. And when you see in nature how so much of it is just built off of survival, and then, thinking about the things that we want and need. And even though we have this sort of higher level of thinking and can contemplate these different things, a lot of the stuff we do is also for survival. And so I think a little bit of seeing the similarities that I saw on my trip and kind of, pinning these things together is in a way a survival mechanism, because what is good for me to move forward? What are the things that I need to see and replicate and resemble in my life and in my thinking, and, maybe copy even? Like, not like content or anything, but like copy a strategy, copy a thing. Like I said, plants will do that all the time. Animals will do that all the time. Camouflage, there are plants that try to look like certain things, and so that, other animals will stay away from it because they think they're dangerous. So we see all of this all the time. And so I wonder if we also, in our own way, kind of do that. It's obviously at a higher level. A lot of times it's at a more like, thinking level. I don't know what word I'm trying to think there. But it's interesting, and it's something to kind of think about. And so in the next few weeks, I'm going to wrap it up now. In the next few weeks, I'm definitely going to be talking about values and adversity, and tying that in with some of the things that we experienced on the trip, especially adversity. I have some funny stories for you guys. As much as I would love to sit here and be like, oh my God, the trip was so perfect, it was not. And if anybody goes on a month-long trip and they're out in the wilderness for as long as we were, I can guarantee you it was not perfect, so don't let them tell you that. But it's what you make of it. And with all that being said, it was awesome. Even some of the bad experiences, I'm so happy we had them, because it led to some really funny stories. So, and it also led to just experiencing kindness that, I somehow have also realized I have an issue accepting kindness from people, and I'm not really sure what that is. And so, again, a lot of stuff to think about, and especially coming into the holiday season, just reflecting on this year, and going into another year. We'll have an episode about that, and yeah. Overall, I'm just really excited to be back here and making this. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I hope it's not too all over the place. But just think about the synchronicities in your life and what's standing out to you. What sort of things, the last few months or the last month have you been thinking about? What you want to do, how you want to do it, what have you been feeling, have you been implementing any of these practices yet? I love to hear from you guys and see how that's been going for you. One of the last few episodes, we talked about how people might not handle it very well if you're kind of changing things up or maybe asserting yourself or whatever sort of things that you need to do to push yourself in that direction. So, I'd love to hear if anyone's having any little controversial conversations, or if it's actually going really well. Maybe your family is a lot more supportive than you gave them credit for, or, whatever it is. But now that you've been kind of like working on some of these ideas, have you had an experience like me where have you been seeing things kind of pop up in your life that really make sense and feel kind of bigger than yourself? And what are you doing with those ideas? Are you taking them and kind of holding on to them, or are you thinking like, oh, that's just a coincidence? Because again, like I said, I think and this is just me saying this isn't from a book, this isn't whatever, this is just me feeling and thinking this way. So take it as you would like, but I think, our minds work in a certain way to help us. And again, going back to when something's natural for you, not that it's not going to be hard, not that it's not going to take work, but it shouldn't be fighting against you. And so I think that when we're seeing these things and these similarities and things are feeling like they're aligning, even if it's still hard, even if there's effort being put into it, right? It's not fighting against itself. It's not saying, it's not being harder than it should be, right? So there's a difference between something taking work and effort and something that's just, you're beating your head against the wall trying to make this thing work. And so, again, when you start seeing these similarities, when you're feeling this alignment, I think it's a really good sign that you're doing what's natural for you, and you're, kind of giving into that. And so, yeah. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Again, I'm really happy to be back. I hope you're happy that I'm back. I hope that this decor won't be too much longer. You will have to bear with me. My setup is going to be a little weird for a while. Our stuff does not get in until like early mid-December, and so I'm not going to have much for a while. It's going to be very basic setup. And so, but I am still so eager to bring you guys things, and yeah, I think that's about all I have. I hope I have some more fun experiences and Japanese stories to tell you. But until then, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know how it's been going with The Art of Living. For those of you that have gotten the book, are reading it, or just, working on sort of the ideas that we've been talking about. I love to hear from you guys. You can email me or put it in the comments, whichever you feel more comfortable with. But yeah, so excited to be back, guys. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye.